We have two scripture readings for today, one from the Gospel of Matthew and the other from Paul's letter to the Romans, of which Michael will get up and read in a minute. We normally here give an introduction to the readings, and most often we read from the Gospels. And I'm certain that by now you've all heard plenty of introductions on it. However, we don't read from Paul's letter to the Romans very often, and so I would like to give you some short words about Paul's letter to the Romans because it's actually central to our faith, and it's a letter that's quoted most often than the others. Although it is the first one that appears in the list of epistles, it's actually the last one that Paul wrote. It's also the longest of his epistles. And it was written somewhere around the year 58 of the Common Era. And it's an exceptional text because in that text, Paul really puts together the core values of what it is to be a Christian, what it is to be a follower of Jesus. Unlike his other letters, in this particular letter to the Romans, Paul does not really address a grievance or a concern. You'll remember that in his other letters, Paul is addressing a community, a church that he founded in some other city, like in Corinthians. And then when he left, he found out that there was trouble brewing. So then he writes them a letter to say, please do not argue amongst yourself. And he gives this whole thing as to how we're all one and how we're all united. That's not present in his letter to the Romans, and mostly because that community there was not founded by Paul. It was founded by Peter and other disciples that followed. So Paul is actually going there, but before he gets there, he sends this letter as an introduction to himself as a prophetic evangelist, but then also to the gospel, the way that he understands it, the way that he presents the gospel, which may have not been, he feared that possibly it wasn't going to be received well, which is why there's a bit of a tone that's defensive in his letter. Eventually, Paul not only introduces himself in this theology to them, but then he also tells them, I'm going to go visit you, which lets us know the true purpose for the letter, and that is that he wants their support. He wants them to support him and his ministry, and then he says, I'm going to continue on. I'm going to go on forward to Spain, and I hope that you might be able to be my support. We know that he did not make it to Spain, and this was his last stop. But it's a very, very beautiful letter, and I want you to keep that in mind. So now I call Michael forward to read our two readings for today.
The first reading is from Romans 11 through 14. Besides this, you know what time it is, how it is now the moment for you to awake from sleep. For salvation is nearer to us now than when we became believers. The night is far gone, the day is near. Let us then lay aside the works of darkness and put on the armor of light. Let us live honorably as in the day, and not in reviling or drunkenness or debauchery or lasciviousness, not in quarreling and in jealousy. Then from the reading of the gospel, Matthew 24 through 42 through 44. Keep awake, because you do not know what day the Lord is coming. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known which night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not have let his house be broken into. Therefore, you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an unexpected hour.